You've awakened the worst FGE in history. 1 cubic meter of storage space. The whole school mocks you as a little portable box that only helps you carry bricks. But they had no idea what was truly terrifying about the laws of space. If you cover half of the space on your head, the other half hangs in the air and then instantly closes forcibly. That's right, this makes it an absolute structure that ignores any defense. Then if you take up 1 cubic meter of space, break it down into 10 cubic centimeter spaces. The cold mechanical eagle echoed in the awakening hall of Jiangcheng No. 1 High School. Thousands of eyes also fell on you at the same time. If you dressed so faintly, it's a joke. Step by step, I climbed from the corner to the high platform. Place your hand on the awakening stone. This world is vulnerable to rampaging. The hierarchy was strict. Awakening some kind of supernatural ability. It almost determines how high a person can climb in the future. It even determines whether he and his family can escape the fate of being favored by the lower class. So at this moment, everyone was watching. When the awakening stone lights up, that radiance was extremely weak, a grayish-white light field. Only a thin layer was covered on the surface, like a flickering candle in the wind. The immortal force from below struck out. Soon after, a wave of public opinion erupted. This is also called awakening. Grayish-white light. What useless superpower. I've never even heard of it. Could it be that he wasn't even considered an outsider? The mentor watched the final frozen text on the screen. He shook his head in disappointment. Announced directly. Lingen. Awakened supernatural powers. Different from others. Storage space. Additional notes. Spatial volume. A single grain of square rice. As soon as he said this, the whole hall burst into laughter. A storage space of 1 square meter. Isn't this just a small portable box? This ability is used in logistics to move goods. Everyone complains that it's too little. She cried her heart out. Even his abilities carried a hint of poverty and bitterness. Harsh mockery came crashing in from all directions. But you just quietly withdrew your hand. Looking at that line of cold mosquitoes, there was no anger on his face, nor was there any resentment. All that remained was deathly silence. You know very well, when there is no strength, emotions are never worth much. But it was at that moment. A blinding golden light suddenly exploded from the backstage. In an instant, all eyes in the arena were drawn to him. Young Master Zhao Zi is level 4. Definitely S-class. It is the Red Lotus Night Fire. The Zhao family bloodline is truly terrifying. Amidst a chorus of exclamations, Zhao Zi, the direct heir of the Zhao family. Surrounded by the flames of the Golden Strike, he walked up to the high platform. He wore a gorgeous school uniform. His expression was undisguised as superior. Unlike you, he was born at the finish line for most people. Now, he has awakened one of the most top-tier attack abilities. From now on, resource status, the future would automatically tilt toward him. But he didn't go to enjoy the cheers first. Instead, it stands still and walks straight up to you, looking down at you from above. A cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Linen, who do I think it is? So it turns out you're the mouse hiding in the saw. He raised his flame-burning fingers, tapping your chest from afar. Word by word, it was a satirical satire. Primary storage space. A single grain of square rice. This is just right. From now on, your poor little sister won't be around. It was perfect for storing her belongings. Mention my sister. The dead water in your eyes finally moved. A wisp of icy sand flashed by. Zhao Zi keenly sensed this change. He laughed even more wildly. Why refuse to accept it? Someone like you. Lian stood here breathing. All of this is wasting the air of Jiangcheng. After speaking, he turned his head directly to look at Mentor Wang. The tone was not negotiating. It was an order. Isn't there still one more school? This is the spot for poor students to be admitted to the War Academy. I remember it was originally meant for him. Instructor Wang's face turned pale. He said softly, yes, based on grades and comprehensive evaluation. This spot was originally reserved for Linian. Now, it's gone. Zhao Zi replied calmly. But it carried a sense of life and death. I don't want to be in a school with me, Zhao Zi. Seeing such mediocre talents who aren't even worthy of being logistics soldiers, still occupying resources. Instructor Wang tried to struggle a bit more. This is not the rule. Rules? Zhao Zi sneered. The flames suddenly surged. Located in Jiangcheng, what my Zhao family said. It's about rules. The hall instantly fell into dead silence. No one speaks for you. Everyone just watches you. There was sympathy in his eyes. There are those who take pleasure in others' misfortune, and the anticipation of seeing you break down. But you didn't collapse. You just lift your eyes. Looking at Zhao Zi. His gaze was terrifyingly calm. It was like looking at someone who already had no future. Zhao Zi hated it the most. It's exactly the kind of look in your eyes. The smile on his face gradually faded, said gloomily, "Very good. I really don't like that look in your eyes. Get lost." Instructor Wang sighed. He handed over a form. "Sign it. This is a withdrawal application. Awaken this supernatural ability. There's no point in staying at school, just accept your fate. Go to the factory in the east of the city to find a job tightening screws. At least they could get by. You take the application." He glanced over. "Then pick up the pen. Write your name in the signature box. The notes are very stable." Without a moment's hesitation. "Signed." You hand the form back. He turned and left. He didn't argue at all. Because in your survival rules, never argue with someone who is dying. You just walked out of the school gate. The sky turned completely overcast. Lightning tears through the clouds. A torrential rain was pouring down on the chaotic scene. "I'll confess to you soon. But you act as if you don't feel the cold." He just walked forward numbly. At that moment, the screen in my pocket, second-hand phones cracked into pearl webs. Suddenly, there was a tremor. After you answered, on the other end of the line came a cold hospital notice. "This is the city's first hospital. Your sister is facing the Shenyuan cold syndrome. Suddenly worsened. He has already been admitted to the intensive care unit. Within 24 hours. A payment of 100,000 SGD is required. Speak alone with a single title. The special medicine can't be paid. We can only stop treatment as prescribed. Bring the patient out of the ICU. 100,000 SGD. This number hits your brain like a heavy hammer. For the wealthy, it's just a number. But for you, slowly crushing that rain-soaked withdrawal application into a slurry. The last bit of silver on his face disappeared. Only resolve, madness, and resolve. The school was gone. The future is gone. There is no legal path either. This world and these rules. I never intended to leave a way out for you and Linxia. Then you have to grab it yourself. So, you suddenly turn around, heading toward the slums on the edge of the city, forgotten by light and order. Further inside, the road grows darker and darker. Finally, you turn into the deepest path, the dirtiest, a dark alley without even street lights. Your gaze, and at that moment, everything changed. "Then I'll give my life. Go snatch it." But just as your flower sound fell, a strong urge that makes one nauseous, just mixing in wild beasts and stirring up trouble, feeling uneasy from the depths of the alley. Immediately after, 2 star-red lanterns quietly lit up in the darkness. That's not a lamp. It was a pair of eyes. A level 2 beast that should have appeared outside the city walls. Shadow Wolf. This beast is renowned for its speed and strength. It is a nightmare for new recruits. Ordinary people face it head-on. Don't even mention winning. Surviving 3 seconds is already a miracle. But the thought of escaping just popped into your head. You extinguish it yourself. Leave your back to a wolf. It will only lead to faster defeat. So you don't retreat and fight back. He stepped forward half a pace. Lower the center of gravity. With lightning speed, he picked up a rusty stick from the ground. A sharp lung reinforcement. Stretching across the chest. This is you in the slum black boxing ring. An instinct forged by trading pain and bones. Facing stronger enemies. The more afraid you are of losing, the faster you lose. Only by showing even greater ruthlessness. And even more reckless attitudes. Only then can there be a glimmer of hope for survival. 1 man and 1 wolf, facing each other in the muddy, dark alley. The next second, the shadow wolf moved. He lunged at him like a black afterimage. Straight for your throat. You can barely see his movements. He could only rely on countless desperate attempts to train his intuition. At the last moment, he suddenly twisted to the right limit. Stinging, you avoid the throat. But his left shoulder and arm were still slashed hard by the wolf's claws. A large chunk of flesh was ripped open on the spot. Crimson liquid instantly sprayed out. The intense pain makes your vision go black, but you have no legs. On the contrary, that pain seems to ignite the scars deep in your bones. You shouted loudly. stretching through twisting, habit. Sex. The shadow wolf cried out in pain and flew into a rage. He suddenly shook his head. You can't hold onto the rebar. He was dragged down and collapsed to the ground. Next, it was a truly savage battle. You roll with him in sewage and mud. He tore your flesh with his powerful claws again and again. You are like a completely mad beast. Most of the defense was abandoned. With fists, elbows, knees, even teeth. Attack every potentially fatal position of him. 3 deep wounds were left on his back, exposing the bone. The injury on my shoulder has been flowing continuously. His stamina and consciousness were rapidly draining. You keep playing more and more slowly. His breathing grew increasingly erratic. Finally, Shadow Wolf seized the opportunity. Suddenly slam you against the wall. You jolt at the back of your head. Panic surged before his eyes. The next second, the heavy wolf body pressed down on him. 2 sharp claws grip your shoulders tightly, pinning you to the corner. You can't move. He lowered his head. The heart-stinking wolf kiss is less than 5 centimeters from your throat. The marks on the fangs were clearly visible. Despair crawled over my body like ice. But just then, but your mind flashes with a pale shade. But she always wore a smiling little face. Bro, you will definitely become the most powerful ability user. Brother, wait until I'm better. I want to eat candied hawthorn with southern Nurga. You can't lose, you lose. What to do if it's below 0? What should I do about 100,000 star coins? The question in the hospital about stopping treatment is what to do. Just as the shadow wolf opened its huge mouth, the moment you're ready to bite your skull, your brain freezes in chaos. Instead, he fell into an unprecedented calm. Pain, fear, unwillingness. It felt as if everything had been pulled out by something. There are only 2 things left in your world. That approaching wolf's head, and that supernatural ability that everyone mocked as useless. Storage space. What is space? It's something invisible and intangible. But the box truly exists. Since it's a box, there must be margins. And when the edge is on and off, they appear and disappear. A crazy thought to the extreme. Suddenly, your consciousness was split open. If there are objects, I happen to be stuck on this edge. Your gaze is fixed tightly, where the shadow wolf's head and neck connect. The next second, you put all your mental energy into it. All will. Even all their vitality. They all squeezed in one. A clear thought never before. The lower half of the space, covering the wolf's head. The upper half of the space, falling into the air above the wolf's neck. Spatial edge, precisely positioned at the junction of the wolf's head and the neck shaft. Received. The storage space instantly closed. The pressure pressing on you suddenly clears. Immediately after, a scorching, sticky liquid, like a desperate place, spraying you all over your head and face. You lean against the wall, panting violently like a broken bellows. He looked down. Her pupils contracted sharply. The shadow wolf's body is still pressed against your legs. But his head was already gone. The cut on the neck was terrifyingly smooth, as if neatly cut by the sharpest laser. Fur, blood vessels, bones, nerves, everything is neat and tidy. Not a trace of thatch. You instinctively close your eyes. He sank his consciousness into his own supernatural space. The next moment, you shuddered all over. That ferocious wolf's head. It was quietly floating in the center of that space, which was only 1 cubic meter wide. His eyes still held the cruelty and error from before his death. The fracture is also as smooth as a mirror. You finally understand. The truly terrifying part of your supernatural power. Never about storage, but rather the edge of space itself. As long as something gets stuck on that edge, whether flesh and blood, bones are still steel, will be directly cut off by the laws of space. This is not an ordinary attack. No physics is involved. And did not concern himself with defense. They don't even consider the difference in strength. It is an absolute distinction at the level of rules. Is the skull of a second-tier beast tough enough? It was still split in 2. Then what about flame powers in the future? Hardening ability. The body of a diamond. As long as it can't block the laws of space, then none of it is meaningless. Powers that are useless in the eyes of the world. At this moment, finally, the true fangs were shown. You look at the wolf head in the space. The corners of his mouth slowly curled into a smile. In the end, He couldn't suppress that surge any longer, the madness of tearing a path out of desperation. He let out a low, wild laugh. Ha ha ha. Laughter echoes through the rainy alley, carrying the madness of survivors, and also the coldness of seeing fate's trump cards clearly. But you quickly force yourself to calm down. Because right now, the most important thing is not happiness. It's money. You endure the giant that feels like your whole body is tearing apart. Using that cheap folding dagger. Relying on the superficial knowledge he had learned while helping people handle exotic beast materials on the black market. Cut open the chest of the shadow wolf. Very soon, you dug out a fist-sized piece next to his heart. A crystal shimmering with a deep blue glow. The second tier easily holds a golden box. And it's a complete shadow gold box. Such items require a license to be traded through official channels. Available on the underground black market, it is the hardest currency. A conservative estimate. This gold box is worth at least 300,000 star coins. 300,000. My sister's medical expenses. Not only that, you might even have a large sum left. You put the gold box away in your storage space, then quickly handle the scene. The wolf's remains are dragged by you to an inconspicuous spot at the alley entrance. A few pieces of meat were scattered around. Disguise yourself as being eaten by other beasts or gangster fights. A rough look of the treatment. Next, you take off that stained school uniform. He threw it directly into the sewage trash bin. School uniforms. It represents the old rule by the book. A student at the mercy of others. From now on, that identity ended. You dig through a pile of trash, pulling out a large black hooded trench coat. Then I used the last few coins in my pocket. I bought the cheapest white plastic mask at a roadside stall. On the mask, drawing a strange, unchanging proofreading. Hood, wear. Half an hour later, you arrived at Jiangqing's largest underground trading center, Black Gold Market. His entrance was hidden deep in an abandoned underground parking lot. Two burly men stood at the entrance. His waist bulged and full. You can tell there's a weapon hiding there. The two saw you wearing a smiling mask, wearing a tattered trench coat. They immediately treat you as a newcomer who can be easily handled. Stop. Scarface sized you up and down. The tone was unfriendly. Where did this kid come from? Wearing a tattered mask to play tricks. Do you understand the rules? Another bald man was even more direct. He reached out to block it. I want to go in. Pay a 100 SGD search fee up front. You stop. No words were spoken. He simply calmly swept his gaze over the two of them. Finally, it landed on the weapon at Scarface's waist. Less than 1 meter. Just right. Scarface saw you stay silent. He reached out to grab the weapon. But before he could draw his weapon, your mental power has precisely pierced the middle of the barrel. Space. Open. Edge. Covering the barrel. Space. Received. Totally awkward. Half of the barrel fell directly to the ground. The cut is as smooth as a mirror. The two burly men froze on the spot. Scarface looked down at the weapon in his hand, which was only half left. Then he looked at the half metal on the ground. A chill surged upward through several streams. They didn't even see what you did. Only the special alloy barrel was visible. It was as if some invisible monster had bitten off a piece out of thin air. Unknown. Far more terrifying than strength. The bald man immediately withdrew his hand. He forced a smile. You, please come in. You didn't even glance at them once. He walked straight into this lawless place. Only the interests of the underworld. The black gold market is much larger inside than outside. It's much more chaotic. The air is mixed with engine oil, inferior alcohol and ozone smell. Everyone's face on the neon license plate was half lit, half dark. Here are mercenaries wearing exoskeletons. There was a man in black selling gold medicine. There were also previous customers exchanging intelligence and bounty lists in the corner. You haven't wasted any time. Stand still toward the most impressive 3-story building in the center of the market. Black Gold Chamber of Commerce. Behind the counter, a chubby shopkeeper weighing about 200 jin was bowing his head to polish gemstones. He asked without even looking up. What to sell? You didn't answer. Just reach your hand above the counter. One side moves. Thud. That's not even the size of a fist. A golden box shimmering with a faint blue light. It landed heavily on the counter. The fat man paused. He slowly looked up. The greed in his eyes was almost impossible to hide. But after all, he was a seasoned black market veteran. The golden color on his face lasted only half a second. It turns into disdain. He picked up the gold box and pretended to examine it. He casually tossed it onto the counter. The quality is average. Energy is versatile. Just reached the level of the second tier. 100,000. Sell it if you want. This is no longer just price cuts. It's almost as good as openly robbing. But you are neither angry, nor did he bargain. He just let out a faint, cold laugh. He raised his hand and put the gold box back into his space. He turned and left. The fat man immediately panicked. Only those who truly don't understand the market will persistently pursue it. Just like you turn around and leave. It only shows you understand better than he does. And so on. The price can be negotiated further. You didn't stop. 200,000. You keep moving forward. 250,000. It couldn't go any higher. Until then. Only then did you stop. Turning half his body to the side. The smiling mask looked especially eerie under the lights. 300,000. Transfer to an anonymous black card. The chubby man's face twitched. In the end, he gritted his teeth and agreed. Very soon, one was pitch black. Metal cards without any markings are pushed in front of you. You pick up your black card. He turned and left. And just as you step out of the Chamber of Commerce, the smile on the chubby man's face vanished instantly. More importantly, on the way, you also casually tested new uses of abilities. You pick up a piece of rubble, put it into space at the moment you take a step, and as he took the next step, release it from the front. The result, that piece of rubble carries the kinetic energy you run on. It shot out like a bullet. At that moment, you immediately realized, storage space is not just cut off. It can also temporarily store and release kinetic energy. So, a more efficient counterattack plan was quickly implemented. You deliberately brought those 5 people along. Annoyed and disturbed in the maze alleys of the black market, eventually, they entered an abandoned 3-level underground parking lot. It's dark here. Remote area. No one. There was no surveillance either. Best suited for handling trouble. Just as expected, when you stopped, the 5 immediately surrounded from different directions. Block all your escape routes. The burly man leading them held an alloy machete. His face was full of cat-and-mouse mockery. The kid really knows how to run. Leave the card behind. Then hand over everything you have on you. A few of them were in a good mood today. Maybe it can even save you a little from suffering. You slowly turn around. The white smiling mask looked eerie and eerie under the dim yellow light. You are not angry. Nor did he make harsh threats. He simply asked in a voice so calm it seemed almost cold. Your heads. Is it valuable? The burly man was momentarily stunned. He immediately flew into a rage. Both hands gripping knives. Covering your forehead was a fierce slash. The blade tears through the air. Whistling downward. Replace it with ordinary people. This strike was enough to strike from head to chest. But not only did you not retreat. Instead, he stepped forward head-on against the blade. At the very moment the blade fell, the edge of space had already swept past the blade ahead of time. So, the sharpest front half of the blade. It vanished into thin air. The burly man's hand lightened. Because of missed effort, it suddenly splits forward sharply. And it had already slipped within a meter of him. Space. Open. Edge. Cover the neck stalk. Space. Received. Pouncing on the food. A muffled thud. The ferocity and rage on the burly man's face instantly froze. The next second, crimson liquid shot up from the severed neck. The headless body maintained its forward lunging stance. He crashed heavily to the ground. The air instantly fell into dead silence. The remaining 4 thugs all froze. Ning Xiao's face was frozen in place. Only the purest terror remains. They didn't even understand what you did. All I saw was the head of a living, large person. It's just that beautiful. Finally, someone screamed in despair. Ghost, ghost. The 4 of them turned and fled. But you can't let them leave alive. You lie down at your feet. He looked like a ghostly figure gliding along the ground. He caught up to the nearest person. And you stand in the center. But the black trench coat was so clean that not a single drop was visible. You squat down. He calmly searched those people. A few minutes later, you get up. The harvest was quite good. Almost cash. Smiling mask, your gaze seems to pierce through layers of darkness. I saw that pale little face in the hospital ICU. Those cold, lifeless eyes. Finally, there was a trace of warmth. Xia, brother has money to save you. You finished speaking softly, carefully put the black card back in the most intimate pocket. After that, he stopped there. He turned and left. Throw this blood-soaked parking lot back into the depths of darkness. You leave less than 5 minutes later. Step, step, step. A rush of hurried footsteps approached. The chubby shopkeeper of the Black Gold Chamber of Commerce, accompanied by a dozen or so wielding energy guns. A fierce guard. They rushed aggressively to this abandoned parking lot. Where is he? Damn it, 5 against 1 can still let him escape. Once they catch that kid, I want to take him down with my own hands. The chubby shopkeeper's cursing voice. At the moment he saw the scene before his eyes. It came to an abrupt halt. The fat on his face trembled violently. Those small eyes squeezed into a slit on their backs. At this moment, his eyes widened in shock, covered in bloodshots. 5 bodies of the body. 5 bodies separated by a single gesture. His most capable enforcer, the boss who awakened sea-level hardened skin. Like a tattered sack, lying in a pool of blood. An incision on the neck. The smooth ones can be used as mirrors. A piercing meaning. Inspired by the bones of a fat man's tailbone. He thud. His legs went weak. He plopped down coldly. In a viscous liquid. His lips trembled. Teeth chattered up and down. Yes, this cut. He pointed to that smooth, mirror-like broken shoulder. Her voice was tinged with tears and endless fear. Not at all. No tears. Yes, it's spatial cutting. To apply the spatial laws so precisely. It was so terrifying. At least at the peak of B class. No? A major figure in the spatial system of the world. The chubby shopkeeper's mind buzzed. A blank slate. What kind of person has he provoked this time? Jiang Cheng. When did such a god of slaughter appear? The night was deep and deep. The rain has stopped. First, put on the black trench coat that symbolizes 0. Smiling mask. And that stained military dagger. Store them together in storage space. Then, you put on that same outfit you picked up from the trash can. Later, when the ones were cleaned up, I was amused. The faded backpack on his back. It has returned to what seemed ordinary. Some of the students were even frail. However, clothes can be changed, but his gaze couldn't go back. The boy who used to carry a hint of inferiority and restraint. It had already disappeared into last night's rainy alley. You now. In his eyes was an unshakable coldness and sharpness. Then, you head straight to Jiangcheng First Hospital. In front of the window where my feet are worn out late at night. The nurse on duty was originally drowsy, but you took that anonymous black card. When the photo touched the glass window, he was still so scared he became alert. He didn't even have time to fully show his expression. You look at him. He said just one sentence. I see you. Below 0. Use the best special medicine. Immediately. Right away. There are 330,000 yuan in the card. Not enough. I'll figure something out. Your voice is hoarse. But there was not the slightest intention of negotiation. The nurse was stunned at first. Then he looked down at the anonymous black card representing a huge sum of money. Look up again at your cheap school uniform. There was a clear hint of disbelief in his eyes. A boy dressed like a poor student. You can easily get over 300,000 Singapore dollars with just a few auctions. This contrast left him momentarily at a loss for words. But the balance in the black card wouldn't be deceiving. So in the end, she immediately changed her attitude. Get up and contact the doctor. Arrange the highest level of treatment procedures. Half an hour later, the latest gene repair agent. Finally, it slowly poured into Lin Xia's body, until he saw his sister's paper-pale little face. Finally, a trace of color slowly returned. Your nerves are always tense. It just loosened up a little. The ward was very quiet. You sit by the bedside. He smoothed her sweat-soaked hair. The movements are very gentle, and only at this moment. The violence in your eyes was so intense it could almost split bones. Kill. Meaning, hold your hand. Gently ask if you're going to do something dangerous. He smelled that fierce egg on you. But the smell of rust cannot be hidden. I also feel a completely different meaning in you compared to before. Your heart suddenly tightened. However, You still forced a gentle smile on your face. She rubbed his head as usual. Softly deceive him. No, brother, just put that school spot, sold to a wealthy chaebol heir. I exchanged some money. First, I'll treat your illness, and spilled down the entire hall. His eyes immediately darkened. He knows all too well what that spot means to you. You know all too well how much you've sacrificed over the years for that spot. So, his eyes were red, whispering that it's all my fault for holding you back. But you only scratched his nose. He said with a smile like a red child. It's just a broken spot. If it's gone, then it's gone. Even if my brother doesn't study, can still become the most formidable person. Don't let your imagination run wild right now. Just focus on recovering well. Wait until you're better. I'll take you to eat candied hawthorn at the place in the south of the city. After Lin Xie fell back asleep, you can prepare wine for him too. Then she quietly watched him for a long time, until they walked out of the ward. That cautious warmth on your face. Only then did it completely disappear. Replacing it, it was a murderous intent colder than the night. Zhao Zi, I'm going to snatch your spot, like your sister. Put your dignity on the score. It's about time to give up. Early the next morning, sunlight shone into the gate of Jiangcheng No. 1 High School. But when it falls on you, it was as if he too was blocked off by that invisible chill. You have been like every day in the past 3 years, carrying an old backpack into school. However, this time, you didn't return to the classroom. Instead, he stopped and went to the academic affairs office, took out a ticket, social dancer exam registration form. Since the guaranteed spot had been forcibly taken by Zhao Zi, so, the path to school has already been cut off. Since that's the case, it's even harder to change to another, even more dangerous. But there is also a more direct path, the social dancer exam. The risk is extremely high. The participants either had no background, no resources, a ruthless person who can only risk his life for his future, or they were driven to the brink, people with no way out. And you? Clearly, it belongs to the latter. However, you just came out of the academic affairs office holding the form. A sharp, urgent voice came from the front of the corridor. Yo, this is not the genius our school once was. Lin Anma, you look up. Zhao Zi was approaching with a few followers. He even held a heavily made-up female classmate in his arms. His face was full of triumph. That look. It was just like climbing up to a high place while stepping on someone else's bones. And even the winner who deliberately turns back to mock them. He walks up to you. First, he deliberately sized you up with a punch. Then he began to mock. They said you didn't come to class yesterday. Are you sad at home? You can't be bothered with him. He turned around, trying to go around from the side. But Zhao Zi just pressed down on your shoulder. Then his gaze dropped. It ended up on the registration form in your hand. He grabbed it casually, looking at the words above. He was momentarily stunned. Then, as if he'd just heard some ridiculous joke, he burst into exaggerated laughter. Social dancer exam registration form. Take a look. A guy who awakened a level 1 storage space. He actually wants to take the major social exam. You just find yourself impatient with life. Are you planning to go out into the wilderness to deliver food to exotic beasts? His voice was loud. So, a large group of students quickly gathered around the corridor. Someone whispered among themselves. They said you must have been upset. Others shook their heads and sighed. I think people like you taking the social exam are no different from courting death. Some people simply wanted to watch the show. I want to see you step in after Zhao Zi steps you down a li. Will he still bow his head and accept his fate like before? In the eyes of these people, your past endurance and silence, it has long been misunderstood as weakness. So, they all thought, this time, there will be no difference. However, and it was precisely when everyone was thinking the same thing. Zhao Zi threw the registration form to the ground. Then lift your foot. Using those limited edition tactics worth tens of thousands of new dollars. He stomped on it hard. He kept grinding back and forth, looking down at you from above. His tone was extremely vicious. Mediocre talent. You should stay where it should be. This piece of paper. It's your delusional fantasy. I crushed it by stepping on it. It's as simple as stepping on an ant. There was only a terrible calm. Those frighteningly black eyes. Like two abysses that swallow light. The next second, Without any warning. Bang. A dull boom. It exploded in the corridor. Your body sinks slightly. In an instant, his right leg turned into an almost indistinct shadow. A powerful main lamp. He kicked Zhao Zi hard into his lower abdomen. That kick was too fast. It's way too heavy. The frozen expression on Zhao Zi's face hadn't even had time to be withdrawn. It was as if he had been struck head-on by a fierce beast charging at high speed. The body assaults the city. Shrimp. Meat. No one expected this. You will take action. No one expected this. You actually kicked Zhao Zi like this with just one foot. Zhao Zi was like a pile of rotten mud. Slide down from a pile of shattered glass. Curled up on the ground. His face was deathly pale. The pain was so intense that he couldn't even let out a complete scream. And you just slowly pull your foot back. Still standing where he was. Just like that kick just now. It's not about kicking someone away. But it was just casually blocking the dust. However, and that's far from over. In the crowd behind Zhao Zi, a middle-aged man with a crew cut, who had been silent all along, suddenly stood up. His temples bulged high. His entire aura suddenly erupted. The floor tiles beneath his feet even cracked several cracks from the force. Prefecture level. A strength-type awakener. This was the bodyguard specially assigned by the Zhao family for Zhao Zi. He was also a tough figure who truly retired from the military system. Kid, you've got some nerve. With a loud shout, the bodyguard charged forward like a cannonball. A fist the size of a clay pot carries a sharp, tearing roar, straight to your face. The surrounding students all panicked. Screams, the sound of gasping, the sounds of retreat mingled into a mess. Because everyone knows. A power-type awakener of this level. One punch broke bones. This is not an exaggeration at all. However, you didn't retreat. Not only did he not retreat. Instead, at the moment the fist was about to touch your nose, he stepped forward to meet them. To be precise, you're not rushing in. But like a drop of water, she slid strangely into the other's arms. It was directly within a meter of the same distance. The bodyguard was momentarily stunned. Then he sneered. Because, in his view, close combat is precisely the area where strength-type awakened excel. So, he immediately withdrew his fist and changed his moves. He suddenly clasped his arms together in the middle. I want to just cut your face's bones and your internal organs. Squeeze them together into powder. What a pity. He had no idea. Within 1 meter. What does it mean to you? Not close-range combat. But it is the line of action. Invisible spatial fluctuations. Flashing by in a flash. You don't even have any extra moves. Just a gentle thought lingered in his heart. Space. Open. Edge. Covers both arm joints. Space. Received. Crack. With a crisp sound that made one's teeth ache. All the teachers and students witnessed the most unforgettable scene of their lives. The bodyguard's 2 arms. Just an inch before it touches your body. It actually broke off at the elbow for a full 77 minutes. 2 thick broken handles with forearms and fists. Still maintaining a closed posture. It abruptly slipped out of her body. Then there were 2 slaps. Fell onto the floor tiles. Incision. Smooth as a mirror. At first, it was a desperate plan. Immediately after, the crimson liquid seemed to be delayed for half a second. It gushed out from those 2 strangely smooth fractures. In an instant, a large fan-shaped mark was cast across the white wall of the corridor. The bodyguard looked down at his empty elbow. He then looked at the 2 still twitching broken stems on the ground. Because they simply didn't see what you had done. He didn't even detect the slightest obvious fluctuation of supernatural power. The arms of a ground-level power-type awakener. And just like that, it was gone. And you? He calmly stepped over the bodyguards wailing in pools of blood. Step by step, he walked toward Zhao Zi. At this very moment, Zhao Zi was completely terrified. His face was as pale as paper. Crawling backward using both hands and feet. Her crotch quickly got wet. He actually lost control right away. You walk up to him. Stop. Then, hundreds of pairs of people were terrified. Reverence. Under the stares of shock. You slowly lift your foot. Using those cheap sneakers that had faded from washing. He stepped heavily on Zhao Zi's distorted face. He pressed his head firmly onto the icy ground covered in shards of glass. Humiliation. An unprecedented humiliation. You looked down at the face beneath your feet, distorted by fear. The voice was not loud, but it was like a cold wave in the far north. The message was clearly heard in the ears of everyone present. You're guaranteed admission spot. I don't care. Pass the major exam. I will do it in front of everyone. Shatter everything you are proud of with your own hands. After speaking, slowly lift your foot. She didn't even bother to look at him again. You turn around, bend over. He picked up the social dancer exam registration form, which had been trampled and covered in footprints. I gently brushed the dust off with my hand. Then carry your old backpack. On the road where everyone automatically gives way. The grate never left. Sunlight streamed through the corridor windows. Stretch your silhouette long. Lonely. Silence. Yet it carries an overwhelming sense of oppression that makes people hardly dare to look at it directly. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, the old principal was watching the surveillance footage playback. His hands were shaking. The scene freezes at the moment you cut off the bodyguard's arms. There was no obvious leakage of spiritual power. No exaggerated energy fluctuations. Even the space itself was almost negligible. The more this is the case, the more it shows how terrifying things are. Because this means, your skills aren't built by fighting. Instead, it directly affects the rule level. The old principal grew more and more alarmed as he looked. He couldn't even hold the teacup steadily. He was shattered to the ground directly. This is not a primary storage space at all. This is the embodiment of the laws of space. At this moment, he finally realized, Jian Cheng has produced a true monster. So, he immediately pressed the emergency button. Order your 3-minute surveillance footage to be listed as S-Class Top Secret. All original data is sealed. No one is permitted to access it. And that's not all. He also demanded that you retrieve all your files from the past 3 years. Clearly, they want to completely re-examine you. A student who was once regarded by everyone as mediocre. However, the school is only just beginning to recognize your value. Over at the Zhao family, he had already developed a genuine murderous intent. Inside the Zhao family villa, the atmosphere beneath the luxurious crystal chandelier was as oppressive as the Ding sect. Zhao Zi had a swollen face. Lying on the sofa, screaming for revenge. I wish you a terrible end. Zhao Xiong stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. He listened to the entire process without saying a word. He then directly dialed an encrypted communication. The person on the other end of the communication, called the hunting dog, that was for doing dirty work in the wilderness. The desperate map squad of shady criminals. Zhao Xiong immediately offered 10 million Singapore dollars. I want to buy your life. But after learning that you had crippled both the arms of a district-level bodyguard in just one encounter, the Hound immediately raised the price. Request another 5 million to upgrade equipment. And it is clear that they are only responsible for manufacturing. Accident. The traces will eventually be cleaned up by one hand. The military could not find any problems. Zhao Xiong agreed without any hesitation. In his view, no matter what kind of monster you are, as long as you enter the wilderness, sooner or later, it will become a corpse torn apart by a beast. 3 days later, there are only half a month left until the National First Level Ability Exam. Jiancheng City Military Joint Education Department. The last large-scale combat trial was organized. The location was just outside the city. Wilderness Zone 07. This trial drove all the senior students crazy. Not only because it directly affects the winners of the major exams. Moreover, the military offered extremely generous rewards. Especially the prize for first place. A piece of immeasurable value. Third-tier energy core. This thing. Enough to make any awakened envious. The playground was filled with military hovering bags. Students gather in groups of 3 to 5. Excited. Nervous. Expectations intertwined. And you? He carried a worn-out tactical backpack. Standing alone in the corner. He was completely out of place with everyone around him. After stopping down the corridor that day, no one dares to come within 3 meters of you. You are like a block of ice. It also looks like a black hole. Instinctively or inspiring. And instinctively keep your distance. And just then, a striking figure appeared. Walk through the crowd to stand before you. Su Shui, the joke at Jiancheng No. 1 High School. He is also recognized as the No. 1 genius. Awakened S-class weapon ability. Always standing at the center of crowds and praise. He was dressed in a white tight-fitting combat suit. Her icy blue hair stood out in the sunlight. He looked like a beautiful and sharp ice blade. He looks at you, rather than just a little reminder, and also a bit of habitual condescending. The wilderness area is not a school corridor. You level up one by one. It's best to move with the main force. Don't lose your life just to show off. From his perspective, this might be considered a form of goodwill, but for you, this is built on the fact that I am higher than you. You should listen to my kindness on the basis of me. It's already very hot and steamy. So, you just glanced up at him. He replied coldly with 2 words. Dry pot. Sushwe was stunned on the spot. He clearly hadn't expected it. He humbly took the initiative to remind him. What he got in return was just these 2 words. So, anger surged all at once. He turned and walked away with a cold face. He threw out a sentence. An ungrateful guy. I want to see how you end up in there. And you just lower your head again, as if nothing had ever happened. For you, irrelevant people, irrelevant words. It was just noise. Very soon, hover buses pass through massive alloy city gates. Drive into Wilderness Area 07. This place and the city are completely different worlds. Towering mutated giant trees. Thick, tangled vines. Damp, foul-smelling air. And the pervasive sense of loss in the shadows. Almost every path serves as a reminder. This is not a training ground. It's the place where you truly lose your life. The instructor gave the order. Thousands of students immediately poured into the jungle. Most people are very smart. Immediately choose to form a team. More than a dozen people. Dozens of people banded together. Carefully hunt a Tier 1 beast in the outer area. After all, for ordinary senior high school students, horned wolf. A Tier 1 beast like the tin-skinned pig is already dangerous enough. But you haven't joined any team. The moment I stepped into the jungle, you will be out of the crowd. He walked alone into the depths of the dense forest. The target is directly at the map marked in bright red. Key annotations. Tier 2, 1 beast active zone. Others fear danger. So we need to stick together. And what you want is efficiency. The dense forest was dimly lit. A normal person would have to be cautious every few steps. Will something suddenly pop out from behind the tree? But your mental power had already swept through like invisible radar. Within 100 meters. Every movement cannot escape your perception. So, the hunt began. 30 meters ahead to the left. A second-tier wild earth with a solitary nature perched in a tree, waiting for the prey to come to your doorstep. You haven't even stopped walking. As they brushed past each other, the space opens and retracts. His head was already gone. A second-tier standing longcat was gnawing on the remains. The speed is extremely fast. Its killing ability is astonishing. But he had just burst out of the bushes. It hadn't landed yet. The head vanished into thin air in midair. Only the headless body remained, rolling out with inertia. And then there's that second-tier rock pangolin, known for its defense. Its shell is so hard it can withstand ordinary knives and axes. But he had only just peeked half his body out from underground. Even the nails and flesh are included. Were all neatly sliced in two by space. You haven't taken care of one. He casually tossed out the gold box. Throw it into the storage space. Skilled in movement. Stay calm. Efficient. Almost no waste. And the numbers on the military points band. It was also beating rapidly. 100, 220, 370, 510, 880. 8 a.m. on the large screen of the trial command center. Your name is like a rocket, soaring from the top few thousand to the top spots. He quickly rushed into the front row, and it's still rising. However, just as you cut open a venomous python again, the moment he just got the gold box in his hand, the chill of being locked in extreme danger on her butt, suddenly explode from your spine, without any thought. Your body's instinctive reaction. Even faster than consciousness. You suddenly lunged forward. He rolled into the nearby bushes. It was almost at the same moment. A large caliber sniper bullet as thick as a thumb. With a piercing laugh, it whistled past where you had been standing. He slammed hard into the giant tree behind him, big enough for 3 people to encircle. Boom! The tree trunk exploded on the spot. His eyes spilled and darted aside. This shot was no longer at the trial level. It's professional hunting. Half kneeling in the shade of the bushes. His gaze was as cold as ice. Large caliber armor-piercing shells. Precise sniping from 1,000 meters away. Plus, this clearly well-prepared ambush route. Besides the Zhao family, you can't think of a second possibility. I want to solve you. Then not a single one will leave. On a mountain peak a kilometer away, the sniper frowned too. He thought it was a task so easy it couldn't get any easier. But that evasive move you just made, the professional is nothing like a student. Instead, it looked like a wolf that had lived in the wilderness for years. Immediately after, the hound squad began to contract the encirclement. 5 people, split into 2 groups, one to the left and right, pressing in head-on. They want to trap you in a local area as fast as possible. However, they think they're training you in a circle. But he didn't know. A true hunter never stand in the center of a siege waiting to die. Your spiritual power has already locked onto the positions of all 5 of them in advance, distance and movement trajectory. So, you not only didn't run away, instead, it stayed close to the shadows of the ground and vegetation. He ghostly cut in reverse and cut into the thinnest side of their encirclement. Number 3 was the first to fall. The man was holding a tactical rifle, carefully cleaning the area ahead. No one expected the danger to come from the front. Instead, it comes from the top of the head. Just as he passed by a huge ancient tree, you have already fallen upside down from the shadows of the tree canopy like a bat. He had just looked up. You are already within 1 meter. Space opens up, covering the helmet and head. Then, closed, pouncing on the food. The voice was so faint it was almost inaudible. The hound team member didn't even have time to raise an alarm. Above the nest, it completely disappears. You casually support your body, gently lean him against the edge of a tree. He didn't even make a sound of falling. Very soon, number 4 was ordered to come and check. He immediately spotted the strange posture of the figure. The nest was completely empty. In that instant, he was completely like a mother. Even the reports were clearly trembling. But at the very moment he was distracted, you cut in again from the shadows on the side. A flash passed. He took his head back again. In just 1 minute, the hunting dog squad ate 2 people. And all of them were silent executions. Now, even the experienced hound captain was truly panicked. He finally realized, this time, he wasn't even taking any student bullets, but a devil who silently harvests lives in the shadows. So, he shouted angrily on the spot, urging everyone to gather around him. At the same time, he fully unleashed his supernatural powers. Sea-level wind ability. Blade stormed like a storm. In an instant, countless rapidly spinning cyan blades slashed in all directions. Ancient trees, vines, shrubs. Everything was cut to shreds like paper paste. A large area of hiding space was forcibly cleared into a messy empty space. And you finally appeared in his field of vision. The captain's face immediately broke into a wild, competing laugh. He felt like he had finally driven you to a dead end. Meanwhile, snipers who always lock onto this area from a kilometer away, and instantly pin the crosshair to your forehead. Once again, pull the trigger without hesitation. Bang, this time it's a game-winning angle. But you didn't dodge. Just as that specially made armor-piercing shell is about to hit your skin, the spiral energy has even blown away the messy hair on your forehead. 1 centimeter in front of your brow. A storage space so tiny it was almost invisible quietly unfolded. So, that bullet was strong enough to pierce tank armor, along with all the destructive kinetic energy it carries, were instantly swallowed by the entire space. No explosions, no offset, not even a trace of decent ripple remained. The storm dispersed, dust slowly settled. In the center of the open space, you still stand there quietly, perfectly intact. This scene, it left Captain Hound's mind blank for a moment. And you? Then slowly turned his head. His gaze crossed a kilometer, accurately aimed at the hill where the sniper was hiding. Her thin lips parted. He only uttered 3 words. Return it to you. The next second, the void before you moves again. That bullet that had just been imprisoned by space. It was shot at exactly the same speed as when it came at me. The exact same angle. He burst out of the space along the same route. The sniper on the hilltop didn't even have time to react. Suddenly, a rapidly magnifying black dot appeared in the scope. Then there was a bang. The high-precision sniper rifle and special scope in his hands exploded on the spot. The bullet he had fired with his own hands. It precisely pierced into his right eye. It literally blew his entire head off. Only a brief scream remained in the communication channel. Then it was completely quiet. At this moment, the Hound captain finally understood. The student he had provoked was not even a capable student, but a monster. So his first reaction wasn't to fight. It was about fleeing. He unleashed his wind powers wildly. A fierce wind gathers beneath his feet. She turned her body to hug her legs. At the same time, he formed his strongest defense in front of him. The wind shelters the barrier. But the problem is, wind is the element. Space, however, is the rule that carries the elements. In the face of true spatial laws, his wind wall was strong enough to deflect the shells. Thin ones are no different from paper. Just pass through like that. No obstacles. He did not hold on. It was like passing through a curtain of water. He was pushed within a meter of him. Then, raise your hand. Pulling on the hood, closed, pouncing on the food, his head flew up. In those eyes, still lingering with extreme shock and fear. As for that headless body, he froze in place for 2 seconds. Then, accompanied by the sky-high burst of crimson, they all fell heavily to the ground. At this point, Hound Squad, all 5 were wiped out. From the very first shot, the captain reached out and touched it. The whole process, no more than 3 minutes. You are not in a hurry to loot the spoils. Instead, they first inspected the site. Because you know very well, this kind of professional dirty work, often things that are truly valuable, not in the gun, nor in the backpack, and in the communication logs. Just as expected, very soon, you come from the captain's tactical vest. He pulled out a military communicator still glowing faintly, and at the very moment you pick it up, Zhao Xiong's anxious and gloomy voice came from inside. Hunting dogs, is everything settled? I asked you to prepare it. Beast chest. Have you used it? Just throw that thing at him. Second-tier exotic beasts within a 10-mile radius would be lured over. By then, his body would be gone. The military only labels it as an accident. Hearing this, your movements, it stopped, but the emotions surging in your eyes. But it was no longer just killing intent. Because you finally understand. This time, the Zhao family was about to do it. It's never just about using the wilderness to get rid of you. Their real intentions. It uses incense to turn the entire outer Heartbreak district into a slaughterhouse. Then a large amount of raw life is roasted. He laid out a dazzling line for Zhao Zi. Beautiful enough. First place. The road. In other words, they want to trample on everyone's lives. Let Zhao Zi reach the summit. You casually crushed the communicator. Then he turned and opened Captain Hound's backpack. Very soon, several branches were burned to ashes. Only a short segment of dark red incense remains. Appear in your hands. That sweet, cloying scent of hair toys. Zhao Xiong's words were almost immediately confirmed. High concentration longevity incense. And not just one. The Zhao family. Crazy. And at that very moment, the earth began to shake violently. Not just a slight tremor. Instead, it was like a dragon turning over from the ground. Even the dirt and fallen leaves beneath my feet were jumping. Immediately after, beastly roars thundered from all directions. Massive logs collapsed in large chunks. Dust and smoke billowed across the sky. Countless pairs of scarlet beast children lit up in the forest. They were rapidly advancing toward the outer trial zone. Beast nest. A tourist accident was triggered. A terrifying beast nest far exceeding the level of this trial. With your abilities, at this moment, he could completely withdraw. You just need to hide. No exotic beast could be easily found. But the problem is, if the beast nest really breaks through the outer camp, this resulted in a large number of student casualties. So, this time, the nationwide focus on the supernatural ability test. It is highly likely that this will be postponed. Some even cancel it outright. And as a result, what you originally planned was he crushed the beast cubs with his own hands in front of everyone, and took first place. Take that third-tier energy core. Will be completely destroyed by the beast family. Since that's the case, this beast lair, you are even less likely to ignore your path. No one can stop them. The beast family does not practice. This group of guys isn't up to par either. So, you don't back down. Instead, it faced the overwhelming tide of beasts capable of swallowing everything. He charged straight ahead. Meanwhile, Zone C on the outer edge of Wilderness Zone 07. Everything was in complete chaos. Sushue was holding the defensive line with a dozen or so students. She continuously erected ice walls. They barely managed to block the first wave of attacks from the Horned Wolf and the Iron Bead. But on those ice walls, soon cracks filled the area. The beasts outside the wall crashed like the wind. Bite. The students, on the other hand, all turned pale. It was clear he was about to collapse. Someone cried and shouted, "What should I do?" Some people also mentioned Zhao Zi in panic. Doesn't he think he's a self-healing powerhouse? Why is there no one at a time like this? The result? A girl shouted out with a sobbing voice. Don't count on him. Just now, the corner corridor rushed over. He pushed Li Ming to block the way. He ran off first. This sentence. It completely extinguished everyone's last hope. Zhao Zi, the one who usually flaunts his power. The wealthy young master who is now attentive to Su Shui. At a true life-or-death moment. The first thing that came to mind. He was actually trading his classmate's life for time to escape. Su Shui was both shocked and furious. But there was no time to curse. Because the next wave of shock has arrived, the ice wall was about to completely collapse. He could only grit his teeth and forcibly overdraw one sect. Hands pressed on the ground, he immediately revealed his area trump card. Glacier Deeds. In an instant, the icy blue cold current surged forth. The nearly 100-meter area ahead was instantly covered by double skiing. More than a dozen were charging one after another. It froze straight into an ice sculpture. The scene was briefly suppressed by him. However, this level of skill. For him now, the burden was too great. The skill had just landed. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of liquid. Dancy knelt down on the ground. His face was frighteningly pale. His internal abilities were nearly exhausted. But it was at this very moment of his tribulation. Boom! The ground ahead suddenly exploded. Dirt and rubble shot up into the sky. One exceeds 15 meters in length. The entire body is covered with black rear carapace. A terrifying beast resembling a prehistoric giant evil but with a horn vying for fame. Emerging from underground. Third-tier commander-level exotic beast. Iron Armor Earth Dragon. As soon as he appeared, all the students were in despair. Because this is not something that should appear in the senior year trial. And certainly not this group of students who have long been pushed to their limits by first-tier exotic beasts. An existence that can be handled. Su Shui understood this as well. Her body could also be depleted. His body was so weak he couldn't even lift a finger. They could only watch helplessly as the armored earth dragon lowered its massive head. It opens its mouth full of fangs. He bit down hard at himself. A strong stench of blood swept over them. Death. So close. She closed her eyes in despair. Just then. Search. A black meteor. Tearing through the dim forest sky. From the canopy dozens of meters high. In a posture that defies the laws of physics. And suddenly fell down. East. A loud crash was so heavy it sent another thunderous roar through the earth. That shadow. Like a meteorite. It struck heavily about half a meter in front of Su Shui. The raging shockwaves mixed with shattered earth. Exploded in all directions. It even shook the massive head of the armored earth dragon backward. Su Shui suddenly opened her eyes. What she saw was a silhouette. One wasn't particularly burly, yet it seems to hold up the entire sky. She carried a school bag that had been washed until it had turned white. Standing there quietly. Beneath his feet was a terrifying crater half a meter deep. At his feet, it was the ironclad earth dragon's massive mouth covered in fangs. Within arm's reach. Linen. Time. It was as if the pause button had been pressed at that moment. The wild wind lifts your goose hair. You still hold a relic from Captain Hound. Stirring up the standard alloy battle. That silhouette was clearly not tall. But it looks like a mountain. They forcibly stood between Su Shui and the third-tier commander. Blocking out all the bloody storms behind him. Su Shui was momentarily stunned. Then his expression changed dramatically. He cried out in shock. Linen, you're crazy. Run. That was a third-tier commander-level move. Its defense couldn't even penetrate armor-piercing shells. You might lose your life. But you didn't even turn your head. The ironclad earth dragon was clearly thoroughly enraged as well. He opened his mouth and roared. The surrounding students in the sound wave all fainted. Immediately after, his huge tail, covered in bone spikes. It swept toward the steel whip like a giant iron whip. Along the way, there are giant trees. Rocks shattered one after another. Crushing the dead and the rotten wood. If it were a head-on clash, you are bound to lose. But if you want to retreat, everyone behind you will be doomed too. In the blink of an eye, your mind has already finished judgment. 1 cubic meter of space. It couldn't contain the entire head of this giant beast. Conventional cutting doesn't mean much to it. I want to solve it. They can only attack from the weakest position. Only the vital points are taken. So, At the moment when that steel whip-like dragon tail is about to strike you, your waist suddenly folds backward at an incredible angle. He almost brushed his nose and dodged the strike. Immediately after, you have no legs behind. Instead, he took advantage of this posture to kick off with both legs. He charged toward the armored earth dragon like a backfired cannonball. Su Shue's face turned deathly pale as she watched. In her view, this is not a fight at all, but rather risking one's life. Just as expected, the armored earth dragon arrow missed in one strike, lifting its giant claws like small trucks, stepping down on your head. But it was just a matter of course. At the very moment the shadow completely enveloped you, your forward body suddenly drops down, with an extremely slippery pose. From the gap where the giant claw fell, Xian slid directly beneath her abdomen. Boom! The giant claw slammed into the ground. A deep pit exploded in the ground on the spot. Su Shue saw this scene through her fingers. He was completely stunned. Of course she knew. The belly is the weakest relative to the armored earth dragon. But that was only relative. The scales there were still incredibly thick. Ordinary attacks simply couldn't break through. But you never intended to break through armor anyway. Beneath the belly of a giant beast, the space is cramped. The foul-smelling slime mixed with the soil kept dripping down. Steady yourself. Casually tossing aside that now meaningless alloy fight. Then he looked up. By perception, he locked onto the violently turbulent heart inside him. The next second, you slowly raise both hands. He suddenly pressed down on that cold, hard spiritual armor. Not chopping. Not charging up. Instead, it was an almost bizarre touch. Silently and without a sound, spatial fluctuations pierced through the spirit armor. It opened directly inside the chest cavity of the armored earth dragon. At this moment, your gaze is as cold as judgment. Give it to me. Fragmented, the order was issued. A single square meter of absolute dark space. It precisely wrapped around the car-sized heart. Then he closed it tightly, pouncing on the food. A dull cutting sound was uttered. It radiated from within him. The armored earth dragon's thunderous roar. It came to an abrupt halt. His massive body suddenly froze. The violence and madness in the crimson tree barrel quickly faded away. All that remains is a sense of confusion and fear born from the instinct of life. He clearly looked completely unharmed. But I could clearly feel it. The circle that supports all your strength. Suddenly, it disappeared. And you have already taken advantage of his moment of stiffness. It slid out from his abdomen. Not even looking back. 2 seconds later, boom, the mountain-like steel beast completely lost its support. It collapsed with a crash. The earth trembled in fear. Amidst the swirling smoke and dust, Su Shue stared blankly at the head, whose surface showed no wounds. But the third-tier commander had already lost all trace of life. It was as if his soul had been drained. His glacial achievements couldn't even be delayed for a moment. But the one everyone mocked as a top-tier mediocrity. But just one touch. Let him die on the spot. This is no longer just a gap in strength. This was something he simply couldn't understand. And you've already walked up to the beast. One side moves. A huge tire-like shape. The top is cut out like a mirror-smooth earth dragon heart. With a thud, it fell into the muddy ground. Inside, expressionless, he inserted his hand. He quickly pulled out a piece about the size of a fist. The entire body was pitch black. Inside, it seemed as if lava was flowing with diamond-shaped crystals. Third-tier commander level. Earth Dragon Golden Box. Su Shue finally managed to regain a bit of consciousness. His voice was dry. Linen, who are you? But you only gave him a cold glance. Don't block the way. 3 words. It directly poisoned all his problems. Then, you grab the ferocious horn of the armored earth dragon. Take a deep breath. Jing forcefully dragged the massive object weighing dozens of tons up to the ground. Step by step, he walked toward the trial camp. That not-so-burly figure. A giant beast splashed like mountain mist. Amidst the dim forest and the sea of beasts and monkeys. Like a master craftsman in the world, Su Shue was watching the scene unfold, thinking of Zhao Zi, who was running for his life with Lin Jingqi. The disgust and contempt in his heart were nearly at their peak. Meanwhile, your silhouette. It was etched into his mind like a brand. Meanwhile, the temporary camp in Wilds number 07 was already in chaos. The outer defense line was on the verge of collapse. The soldiers were desperately organizing the students to evacuate. Inside the command post, the colonel stared at the large red dots on the radar that kept approaching. His face turned ashen. He was angrily rebuking the intelligence department. And just then, Zhao Zi scrambling in, and fell to the ground. He shouted in a voice full of fear, "Officer, I know how dampness comes from. It was linen. It was that urgent and mediocre man." The colonel frowned. "Let him be clear." So, Zhao Zi immediately began to twist the facts. "They said you didn't know where you got the high-concentration Yinshu incense. Throwing it everywhere. He even threatened to drag everyone down with him. In other words, he wants to take advantage of your death in the beast den, throwing all the dirty water at you all at once, whitewashing himself as a hero who exposes the truth." The colonel's expression grew darker and darker. Zhao Zi thought to himself, just as he was about to add fuel to the fire. But just then, a heavy footstep sound shook the ground. It came from the camp entrance. Dong dong. The voice grew closer and closer. It was as if every step was on everyone's heart. Very soon, the mist was slowly torn apart, under everyone's shocked gazes. "You dragged that mountain-like third-tier bucket with one hand." The massive body of the armored earth dragon. Step by step, they entered the camp. "You covered in mud." His expression was cold and indifferent, like a demon god just emerging from purgatory. "You ignored all the stares." He walked straight up to Zhao Zi. Then he took the Hound Squad tactical backpack he was holding in his other hand. "And that communicator you turned into scrap metal." It slammed hard at his feet. "The Zhao family. You have to give me an explanation. These? Did you drop it?" A desperate plan. The camp seemed to be drained of all sounds in an instant. The grief and anger on Zhao Zi's face instantly froze. In its place is extreme fear. He was as pale as a ghost. He even blurted out a sentence. "You're not dead." Only after saying this did he realize he had almost confessed without a word. "You can't be bothered with him." Kick the backpack aside. The dark red box had burned out. Dog Captain's identity badge. And that communicator still glowing faintly. They all rolled out together. Immediately after, "You press play." Zhao Xiong's voice was dark and urgent. Instantly, the sound echoed throughout the camp through loudspeakers. "Just throw that thing at him." Second-tier exotic beasts within a 10-mile radius would be lured over. By then, his body would be gone. The military only labels it as an accident. The evidence is as solid as a mountain. The crowd instantly exploded. It really was the Zhao family's doing. And hired villains to harm others. And they want to kill all of us. Zhao Zi, that scoundrel. The colonel's expression darkened several times at that moment. But Zhao Zi still wouldn't give up. Sprawled on the ground, screaming. "They say how could you possibly take down the Hound Squad with one strike? How could he possibly drag back the body of a third-tier Earth Dragon? All of this is a setup." Hearing this, you finally showed a faint cold smile. "One strike. You raise your hand." He showed a student surveillance wristband stained with stains. "What you mean? One level. I casually found evidence that you harmed others." The next second, you forcibly hacked the bracelet's permissions. A scene was projected onto the command center's repertoire. In the scene, the corner corridor is spread out and worn out. Zhao Zi not only failed to save the person. Instead, he pushed Li Ming beside him to block him. He fled for his life without looking back. At the end of the shot, fixed on his face, struggling with excitement and twisted emotions. If the recording only made everyone angry. So, this scene. It completely ignited the killing intent. Zhao Zi, give me my brother's life. Such scum don't deserve to live. And just then, Sishua also hurried over, supported by several girls. Her face was pale. Yet he still gritted his teeth and testified publicly. "I can attest to it." Zhao Zi abandoned his classmates and fled alone in the face of battle. It was Linen who saved all of us. With the public testimony of an S-rank genius, Zhao Zi's last bit of struggle was completely crushed. The colonel took a deep breath. He spun around abruptly. He ordered the law enforcement team to arrest Zhao Zi. Detained. Transferred to the highest level of military tribunal for trial. Zhao Zi completely broke down. He cried out in agony and misery. And just as the enforcement team was about to catch him, "Who dares touch my son?" A thunderous explosion of a crane detonated. A terrifying fifth-level pressure so intense it could freeze the air. It swept through the entire arena with a thunderous roar. Almost all the students knelt down in unison. The weaker ones passed out on the spot. Immediately after, a middle-aged figure dressed in luxurious clothes. In an instant, he appeared right in front of Zhao Zi. "Protect him behind you." Zhao Xiong, head of the Zhao family. He didn't even look at the evidence on the ground. Instead, it's fixated on you. A fierce slaughter in his eyes. Kid, how dare you slander me? Return to my Zhao family to give birth. Today, no one can defeat you. Before he finished speaking, a massive claw is already fiercely grabbing at the top of your head. 5 ranks. Is it really that strong? You stand where you are. There was not a trace of fear in his eyes. Instead, all that remains is a destructive urge after being completely enraged. Your space has already begun to quietly distort in front of your brow. Prepare to risk serious injuries. He also had to cripple one of Zhao Xiong's arms first, but it was just a matter of course. At this critical moment, reckless, a roar even more domineering than Zhao Xiong's. Suddenly, it explodes right in front of you, and did not know when. That colonel is already blocking your way. He didn't make any flashy moves. He simply threw a simple punch. The result, Zhao Xiong could only measure the giant claw and shattered inch by inch on the spot. The terrifying force smashed into Zhao Xiong's chest with full force. He was beaten so badly that he spat liquid and flew backward. He crashed into several military tents before falling in a sorry state. One punch, and severely wounded him by 5 ranks. 6 steps. The colonel slowly withdrew his fist. His gaze was chillingly cold. At our military camp, blatantly attacking a military witness and the first-place winner of this trial. Zhao Xiong, are you trying to make the entire Zhao family perish with you? This sentence. The fate of the Zhao father and son was completely decided. Very soon, Zhao Xiong and Zhao Ziyi were dragged away like tattered sacks. As for the conspiracy carefully orchestrated by the Zhao family, it was completely exposed in front of everyone's anger. The camp was silent. All the students look at you. His gaze had shifted from shock to awe, even fear. And when the colonel turns to look at you, the anger in his eyes had already faded. Instead, there is undisguised admiration and passion. Linen, you slew a 3rd-tier commander. Iron Armor Earth Dragon. Exposed the criminal. Saving classmates. His merits and achievements were outstanding. Decided unanimously by the command center. He was the first place in this joint trial. As he spoke, he was from the adjutant. He took a specially made metal box. Presented to you. This is your reward. 3rd-tier Earth Dragon Energy Core. Then, he threw out another one. Enough to make countless people go crazy with invitations. Additionally, on behalf of the Eastern Military District, I formally invite you. Interested? Skip all the steps. Join directly. Azure Dragon. Special Operations Team. You take the box. Feeling the surging energy within. The weight in my heart finally eased a little. But immediately after, you should still lift your head. He slowly shook his head. Sorry, officer. Before the adjutant. I have to use it first. To save my sister's life. You almost always make it back to the first central hospital on time. But it was just a matter of course. It feels as if fate is deliberately mocking you. When you push open the ICU room door, the scene of his sister sleeping quietly did not appear. Replacing it, it is the eardrum-tearing alarm sound of the eardrum. The ward was as cold as an ice cellar. Below zero on the hospital bed. His entire body was covered with a layer of visible frost. Even the metal railings and bedding edges were twisted into a fierce ghost. Ice. Cold sweat on my head. He spoke so fast it was almost out of breath. It has mutated. Inside your sister's body. Abyssal cold fall syndrome. Sudden malignant mutation. That chill seemed to gain self-awareness. Repelling and devouring all external energy. We just tried to inject the gentle energy liquid. Everything was frozen. Speaking of which, she looks at the metal box in your hand. His gaze was like seeing a lifeline. It was like seeing a death sentence. The energy of the 3rd-tier Earth Dragon Core was too violent. Use it now. Not only could he not save her. Instead, it would splash water on Wang Ganyu. Instantly ignited within her body. Cold. Anger. What to do? The doctor swallowed hard. Spit out the only answer. Within 3 days, you must find a piece whose attributes match perfectly. The energy is pure and pure. 4th-tier Ice Soul Golden Box. Only by relying on it can you calm them. Instead of fighting against the mutated cold energy inside it. Only then did there be a glimmer of hope. 3 days. 4th Tier Ice Soul Golden Box. This is almost harder than dying. The Tier 4 Gold Box itself is a strategic resource. Not to mention the Ice Soul Golden Box. A rare and top-tier item among peers. It's basically impossible to have stock on the open market. Even if the military arsenal had some. Nor is it something you can encounter right now. So, you didn't waste any more time. He quietly walked out of the ward. Stand at the end of the corridor. He took out that old black phone. Send an encrypted message. Son, the soldiers of the 4 streets broke through Jinhe. Achieved. 3 days. The cost is not counted. The phone replied almost instantly. Open market. None. Military district arsenal. 3 pieces. Insufficient authority. Cannot be exchanged. The only clue. Tonight, beneath Jiangcheng. A battlefield of carnage. 100 men were beheaded. Challenge the final winner reward. A battlefield of carnage. The bloodiest underground world in Jiangcheng. The most insane lawless land. 100 men were beheaded. One night. Fight 100 consecutive battles from prison. The battlefield. A fugitive land picked out from the wasteland. Neither death nor rest. Never resting along the way. In 100 years, only 3 people have succeeded. The challenge failure rate is almost 100%. But you glanced inside. Behind the ICU ward door with a flashing red light. All the hesitation in his eyes vanished. Since there was no other choice. Then go fight your way out. Midnight. Old industrial zone. Inside an abandoned steel smelter. It was transformed into a massive underground arena. The air was thick with the smell of sweat, alcohol and unpleasant odors. Heavy metal music is deafening. Thousands of spectators screamed like madmen. You wear that pale, stiff smiling mask. When I walked into the back-end registration desk, a burly man with a scorpion tattoo responsible for registration just glanced at you. He then smiled foolishly and told you to get lost. They say this is a battlefield. It's not a place for kids to play house. You didn't waste words with him. He simply picked up the stained life and death document. Then he bit down his own thumb. Liquid gushed out. You expressionlessly marked that warm bloody fingerprint. Just one glance sent chills down your spine. He didn't even say another word. Just handing you a black number plate. 9527. Then, you turn around, heading toward the iron gate leading to hell. The first round. The opponent is Black Ape. A peak 2nd tier beast transformation superpower. He is over 2.5 meters tall, covered in black hair. His strength was boundless, and was notorious for his cruelty. The audience was still joking and laughing. He felt that your skinny frame was nowhere near enough to fill his gaps. However, the referee began to call out. The Black Ape roared and charged forward. The giant palm almost crushed your head on the spot. But just before he meets you, you just turn slightly to the side, brushing past that massive figure. Thud. After a clear sound, the Black Ape crashed into the Iron Dragon with a thunderous crash. Then, under thousands of gazes, his head still carries the power of competing for fame. Smoothly slipping down from the neck, crimson rose into the sky. The whole arena was a desperate move. Then it boiled over completely. 9527's name. The first car crash. But immediately after, the second round. Round 5. Scene 10. 37th round. Everyone gradually began to notice. Smooth steps. She walked up to him. The next second, his head rolled to the ground. Further on, no matter how hard it is, sneak attack, long distance, and besieged and killed them. The result is the same. A single blow kills the enemy. No extra tricks. No flashy clashes. There wasn't even any decent combat process. You just get close. Then, the other party collapsed. So, the cheers in the stands grew less and less. In its place was an overwhelmingly oppressive silence and the sound of people gasping in shock. Because everyone can see it. You're not here to challenge. 100 men were attacked one by one. You're clearing the field. It's about harvesting. By the end of the 99th match, even his breathing rate was never irregular. The entire battlefield. Dead silence. Meanwhile, inside the luxury private room on the top floor, the master of the Azure Arena, Jin Yi, looked terrifyingly grim. That 4th-tier Ice Soul gold box. It was originally a gimmick set up here by a prominent figure in the province. No one intended to actually take it. But you are already one step away from claiming it. Jin Yi sneered. He pressed the red button on the wall directly. Activate. Qing Daofu. Agreement. Let the Titans. Come on. Rumble. Inside the octagonal dragon, that door leading to the ultimate challenge. A giant gate crafted with special precision, slowly rising. One force surpasses all previous opponents combined. And 100-fold terrifying ferocity. Like a torrent of substance. It bursts forth from the darkness behind the door. One was nearly 3 meters tall. His muscles were like steel and glue pillars. A giant with skin that shows a bronze metallic sheen. Step by step, he walked out. He didn't take a single step. The entire octagonal dragon trembled slightly. In the audience, the silent crowd instantly erupted in terrified screams. It's the Titan. The indestructible Titan. Oh my God. Wasn't he locked up at the very bottom of the black prison? How could it come out? Now that mask is hard to play. The Titan was a monster that had once torn apart a tier 4 beast barehanded. Nautilus walked into the middle of the arena, ignoring the fallen people everywhere. Those eyes of the same age. Locked onto you tightly. He grinned, revealing a set of gleaming white teeth. The sound was as piercing as metal scraping. Kid, your killing game. That's all for now. Now, it's my turn. The Titans' voices rubbed against each other like rusty iron plates. Calm. Yet it is even more chilling than a roar. Kid, your killing game. That's all for now. Now, it's my turn. The audience was unanimous at first. Immediately after, an even louder scream erupted. Everyone recognized this nearly 3-meter-tall figure. A monster shimmering with an ancient bronze metallic sheen. Qingdao Titan. The true trump card at the bottom of the battlefield. Rumor has it that its 4th stage is absolutely hardened. It can make the body tougher than top-tier alloy armor. Ordinary cutting details are completely ineffective against it. But it was just a matter of course. You can't be bothered to reply even a single word. The next second, your figure vanished from where you stood. At the time of appearance, it had already ghostly pressed against the left side of the Titan. The military dagger in his hand traced a pitch-black arc. He lunged straight for his neck. This strike, it even contained a trace of the most basic spatial compression force. Forget flesh and blood. Even tank armor should be neatly cut open. However, gun. With a piercing sound, the light exploded violently. The 4 swords of fire star. The dagger in your hand that can cut through iron like mud. The moment it touched his skin, it shattered inch by inch. As for the Titan's neck, only a faint white mark that disappeared almost instantly. The Titan finally smiled. The laughter made the entire octagonal dragon tremble. Little bugs. I said so. Your little trick of cutting. It doesn't work on me. Before he finished speaking, he swung a punch with a backhand gesture. No flashy energy at all. There are no complicated moves either. Only pure power refined to the extreme. Quick, too fast. You can clearly see through his tricks. But his body didn't have time to completely dodge. All I could do was instantly cross my arms and shield my chest. Bang. That punch was like a maglev train crashing at full speed. Hit you hard. You were blasted backward. It crashed into the alloy iron mesh. The iron mesh immediately protruded outward, forming a huge humanoid depression. Immediately after, a mouthful of liquid gushed from under the mask's lower eye. The combat uniform on the chest was stained red. The whole place instantly fell silent. Then an even more wild cheer erupted. Just moments ago, those who were so overwhelmed by your fear of killing 99 people in a row that they didn't dare to make a sound. At this moment, it was as if he had suddenly found an outlet for his outlet. He roared desperately, waiting to see how you get crushed. Inside the private room, Master Jin picked up his wine glass again. His expression was contemptuous yet content. In his eyes, in the end, you're just a guy who uses strange means to get out of hand. And Titan represents true power. However, you leaning against the barbed wire, slowly wiping the liquid from the corner of his mouth. But his gaze remained icy cold, without a trace of emotion. You've come to your conclusion. Conventional spatial cutting is not absolutely invincible. When the target is the material density and energy structure, When it exceeds a certain preset value, the shear reduction force generated by the closure will be greatly nerfed. That is, hard cutting from the outside. It was impossible to break through its defenses in a short time. But the problem is, you don't have the time to be good. Your sister is still waiting for you at the hospital. The fourth-tier Ice Soul Gold box was right in front of him. Since the outside world is not allowed, then start from within. So, you straighten up again. Titan saw this. Instead, a trace of fine blood appeared in his eyes. It can still move. Looks like I used too little strength just now. You still didn't answer. Just once again. He rushed forward on his own. In everyone's eyes, this is like a moth to a flame. Titan thought so too. So this time, he didn't even bother to throw a punch. Instead, he smiled calmly and spread his arms. I'm planning to just get you alive. Squeeze the bones and innards together into powder. 10 meters. 5 meters. 3 meters. Just as the two were about to collide, your body suddenly sinks. She avoided his chest, pressing down like a fan. He looked like a slippery shadow. She flashed past his side. Meanwhile, open the 5 fingers of your right hand. Gently pressed his temple. That movement. Even like a lover's touch. The wild laughter on Titan's face hadn't yet faded. And in your eyes, all that remains is the extreme cold rain madness. Space. Open. This time. Not cut from the outside. Nor is it about closing the head to the end. You are right inside his indestructible skull. In the core area of the brain, protected layer by thick skull. Forcibly carved out a cube space 1 centimeter on each side. It existed only for a moment. Then, restore to the original state. The most fundamental law of the universe. In that brief 10,000th of a second. Completed a cycle of creation and annihilation. The Titan froze. His gaze. Expression. Action. Everything was frozen in that moment. Immediately after. A wisp of crimson liquid slowly slipped out from his left ear. Then came the right ear. Nostrils. At the corner of the eye. The corner of his mouth. 7 leaf marks slowly flowed down along that bronze face. Drawing a pattern that is bizarre to the extreme. The next second. Thud. All his expressions froze on his face. Thousands of pairs of eyes stared intently at that one. A body oozing liquid strangely. Then I looked at you standing beside me. No wounds. No confrontation. Only one touch. Then, God has fallen. After a brief desperate move, an injured man in the front row had a wine glass in his hand clattering to the ground. It was as if he had pressed a switch. The next second, the entire venue was completely blown up. Countless spectators screamed, crying and shouting. They squeezed outside. I just want to escape this place that feels like hell. But you ignored any of the commotion. You lift your head, separated by layers of crowds. Looking toward the luxurious private room on the top floor. His voice was slightly hoarse from his injuries. Yet it remained cold and clear. 100 matches. It's over. 4th tier ice breaks the golden box. Bring it here. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd paused for a moment. Yes. You win. The 100-man kill was complete. According to the rules, the prize should belong to you. However, Jin Yi clearly never intended to follow the rules. He stood in front of the microphone. Cold laughter echoed through loudspeakers throughout the venue. 9,527. You really did surprise me. What a pity. Do you really think your little tricks can fool everyone? The Titan's body is tougher than the armor of a warship. But he fell silently. Not even a single decent wound was left. This was clearly a curse-killing show. All the way to ban neurotoxins. So you broke the rules. According to the rules of the Azura Arena book, once the challenger uses a forbidden technique, the results were voided. Prizes will be confiscated. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole arena erupted in an uproar once again. Black against black. Everyone instantly understood. Tonight, what I was after was no longer a gold box. It's your disregard for defense. A bizarre secret technique that kills with a single blow. He wanted to bring both the person and the treasure. Swallow it all together. Immediately after, he added another generous remark, pretending to be magnanimous. However, I can give you a way out. Hand over your secretary. I let you live. You could even be the most valuable dog under my command. You stand where you are. He slowly looked up. At this moment, The last thing you see is right. Rule of patience. It was completely shattered. You followed their rules. Fight your way out with your life and pain. But the dealer tells you. You win. But I don't admit it. Then there's nothing more to say. You just chuckled softly. Tonight was clearly completely enraged by that laugh. He gave the order directly. Take him down, regardless of life or death. I want his secret. In the next instant, the 8 alloy gates surrounding the octagonal dragon rose simultaneously. Team after squad fully armed. Wears black exoskeleton armor. The 4th army of the Zaibatsu holding a Ko's kinetic rifle. Like a tide surging out of the darkness. A pitch-black muzzle. A scope gleaming with a ghostly blue electric light. At the same time, everything is locked in you. A full 100 people, and every single one. They were all veterans who had seen the scene before. The audience completely collapsed. The survivors sealed a single gate. Everyone knows. A battlefield of carnage. Qingdaofu. Unit 1. At dawn. Mobilized. Over 100 Gauss rifles simultaneously spewed tongues of fire. Dense and golden warheads tear through the air, weaving a deadly net from all directions, leaving no dead spots. Instantly swallowing your figure completely. Smoke, firelight, sly laughter, burst open together. But it was just a matter of course. After the gunfire stopped, you still stand where you are, unharmed, within 1 meter of your body. The space had already twisted into a bizarre shape almost like a funhouse mirror. Thousands of rounds were enough to penetrate tanks and golden warheads. All of them were affected. Swallow, he entered that twisted area, hovering in midair like an insect sealed by amber. Their kinetic energy is forcibly stripped away, and was placed under confinement, and after being squeezed and rubbed against each other in a narrow space, the warhead even began to glow bright red. Wang Ming's name was endless. All the Saiyans were stunned. They have seen bulletproof shields, seen the energy passport. I've also seen superpowered individuals who physically withstand bullets. But no one had ever seen a bullet stop in midair. This is not defense. This is a ban. You raise your hand, facing that twisted space filled with a deadly storm. A gentle grip. Now, it's my turn. The next second, you suddenly turn around. His arm swept across. That space containing thousands of crimson warheads. You were thrown directly toward the densest 4-army formation on the left. Meanwhile, the space is restored to its straightness. All the deprived kinetic energy is returned in an instant. Whoosh, whoosh. No gunshots. Only the sharp sound of the air tearing through the air was a continuous blast. Those warheads have been flowing back faster than in the afterlife. A fan-shaped crimson barrage of comments formed. The dozens of soldiers in the front row didn't even have time to react, and was shot through. Exoskeleton armor, bones, flesh and blood. In that instant, it all became a joke. The massive wings exploded with a thunderous roar. The entire battlefield was dyed a new red. The survivors were terrified on the spot. Someone retreated. Someone screamed. Some people threw high-explosive grenades and Molotov cocktails without regard, trying to completely overwhelm you with even greater firepower. However, you didn't even look. Explosion, blazing flames, shockwave, fragments from the airship. Not only did he fail to hurt you, instead, it was once again devoured by that twisted spatial contest. A single square meter of space. At this moment, it was like turning into a small star about to lose control. Inside, it is filled with pure and violent explosive energy. Then you rush in. You just wander idly through the sea of fire. They approached the completely disorganized formation of the 4 armies. His gaze locked onto the captain who was trying to escape. Immediately after, you have loosened your grip on space. Return it to you. Boom. The explosive energy compressed to the extreme was instantly released. Centered on you, it transforms into a death fireball over 10 meters wide, sweeping in all directions. A dozen or so 4th Army soldiers were swept up head-on, vaporized on the spot along with the armor. Those on the periphery are the first to be ignited by the high temperatures. It was torn apart by a massive barrage of high-speed shrapnel. Even the screams were blown to pieces. This is no longer a fight. This is a massacre. Your space, here, it directly becomes the most terrifying mobile weapon. The stronger the enemy's firepower, the more deadly the things you return are. So-called numerical advantage. Suppressive firepower. in the face of true spatial laws. It's just a joke. Very soon, the entire venue was left with only wailing and the sounds of fire. The commander of the Fourth Army, who was lucky enough not to be killed by the first wave of explosions, dragging half of his charred body. Using both hands and feet, he crawled toward the top-floor private room, crying out for help. And inside the private room, Master Jin had already slumped into the sofa. Looking at the surveillance footage of that earthly reign, all that remained on his face was blatant fear. Previously, he thought you only had some kind of hidden killer move. But now, he finally understood. The person he had provoked was not a madman skilled in secret arts, but a complete monster. So, he turned and ran. However, he had only taken 2 steps. A loud bang came from behind. The commander was like a tattered sack. Someone kicked the door of the private room open, rolled to his feet. The captain let out 2 chuckles from his throat. He raised his hand and pointed to the door. Then his head tilted. He completely stopped breathing. Master Jin stiffly turned his head. In the dust outside the door, you walk in slowly. You are covered in filth. The pale, smiling mask had long since been stained dark red. Eyes beneath the mask, so calm it was terrifying. You don't have any unnecessary words. But he walked up to the special bulletproof glass that was said to withstand armor-piercing rounds. He slowly raised his right hand. His 5 fingers gently pressed down. The next second, centered on your palm, black cracks like a beaded web began to spread across the entire glass surface. This is not the pain of shattering. That was the space itself being torn open. Tonight, he finally broke down completely, screaming and shouting to stop. Even moving out. Fortress. The origin of Glass's military achievements. Taking money again. Taking advantage of the Wang family background. Using the so-called Shong and Xie to seek their lives. What a pity. These words don't even count as rumors to you. You drilled with 5 fingers. Crack. Buzz. After a strange muffled sound, that thick special bulletproof glass wall combined with half a meter thick alloy wall. You have been completely taken down. He picked it off. A perfect round hole 3 meters in diameter was left in the wall. The massive circular wall crashed down with a thunderous crash. The whole private room shook so much that it shook. Tonight's last sense of security. And was smashed together. He knelt down with a thud, kowtowing furiously. Snot and tears suddenly covered his face. Don't get physical. I'll give you the stuff. All were granted. The 4th Dear Ice Soul gold box was inside the safe. You grabbed his hair in one go. He lifted him up from the ground. Like taking off a sack, he took it off in front of the hidden compartment. After verifying with a red film and fingerprint, the safe slowly opened. A chilling aura instantly filled the entire room. Tonight, trembling, he held out a blue metal box. Raise both hands above your head. You take the box. Lift it with one hand. The box was about the size of a fist. The entire body was crystal clear. Inside, it felt as if an icy blue storm was spinning like a golden box. It immediately came into view. That coldness was pure to the extreme. The spatial power within your body trembled slightly. It was true fire. You immediately store it in the space. But tonight, I was about to hand over the goods. He actually wanted to keep asking for attention. He even brought out that he was from the Wang family of the provincial capital. I want to keep it secret with my background. What a pity. He hadn't finished speaking. An invisible gleam flashed by. His voice abruptly stopped. The head and body were instantly separated. Round and plump to the ground. The liquid from the gun sprayed out. I saw half of you. You kicked away the still convulsing body. His tone was so cold it didn't fluctuate at all. I don't care who you are. Cutting grass without removing the roots. Sooner or later, they will backfire. This kind of thing. You learned it all the time ago in the dark alleys of the civilian district. After receiving the items, you didn't leave immediately. Instead, he casually cut open the main gas pipeline in the corner. High-pressure gas gushed out sharply. The entire private room quickly fills up. Immediately after, you light another lighter, casually tossing that little flame into this luxurious yet most evil grave. Then, you turn around. Without looking back, you walked out. A few seconds later, boom! A deafening explosion suddenly erupted from the top floor. Flames and shockwaves swept across the entire underground battlefield like an enraged dragon. The steel is twisting. The wall was collapsing. This is a place that has devoured countless lives. Finally, it has met its rightful destruction. and you face the flames and heat behind you. Step by step, he climbed the stairs leading to the surface. When you push open the heavy iron door, the dazzling morning light shines on your face. You raise your hand. He slowly removed the dark red smiling mask, revealing a young face that was somewhat pale yet sharp and cold. The Ice Soul Golden Box. Got it. Next, it was to save his sister. As for the other chiefs, let's recalculate another day. In the early hours, you almost broke through the silence of the hospital all the way. The doctor on duty was originally wearing pajamas, but when you put that cold box containing the 4th tier Ice Soul Gold Box, when it slammed heavily on the table, he instantly became fully alert. Even the voice changed pitch. 4th tier Ice Soul Golden Box. Very soon, the entire intensive care ward was brightly lit once again. Top doctors, a sterile laboratory, dilution procedure, energy guidance. A series of operations that would normally be impossible to complete quickly at such a time. All were forcibly pushed by this golden box. You stand outside the sterile observation room. Through the glass, he stared intently at the statue on the hospital bed. Diluted ice blue energy. Using precise instruments, they injected it into his body bit by bit. At the very beginning, the life curve on the monitor was still fluctuating violently. You can almost hear your own heart pounding. However, a moment later, change finally happened. The deadly frost on his face began to slowly fade. Qingzi's lips gradually recovered. The heartbeat, once so faint it was almost gone. From 30, 40, 50, it has been steadily recovering. Eventually, it stabilized within the normal range. The hospital room was filled with a series of piercing alarms. But one after another, they went out, until the first ray of sunlight shone into the corridor at dawn. Only after organizing the doctor did he remove his mask. His face was full of exhaustion, but he couldn't hide his excitement. It worked. Her physical functions have stabilized. Next, all that's needed is rest and recovery. This move, it's like suddenly pulling out the last pillar of your body. The nerves you've been tense for half a month have finally completely relaxed. A tidal wave of exhaustion instantly overwhelmed his body. You just sit by the bedside, watching his sister finally regain a hint of her rosy sleeping face. Her eyelids couldn't hold up any longer. He fell into a deep sleep. This has been the case for a long time. You slept the most soundly. But you don't know the massive 4th tier cold energy within Lingxia's body. After stabilizing his life, a tiny fraction still remains. That strand of pure and supreme energy, following some indescribable bloodline connection within his chest, silently and imperceptibly flows into your body. For the entire 4th tier gold box, this residual residue is insignificant, but for you right now, yet it is enough to trigger a true transformation. No one knew how much time had passed. You suddenly wake up. At first, there was a sharp, intense pain. It was as if a steel needle was fiercely stirring in his mind. But immediately after, this pain was completely overwhelmed by a kind of soul-elevating pleasure. You can feel it clearly. Deep in your mind, that invisible barrier that originally restricted your spatial abilities. It was shattered by the explosion of this external energy. Spiritual foresight breakthrough. Space control surged. You immediately look inward, the psychic core. Then, your breathing healed for a moment. That storage space that originally had only 1 cubic meter of space. At this moment, it was as if an invisible giant hand had forcibly torn it apart. Expand. The volume skyrocketed. 2 cubic meters, 5 cubic meters, 10 cubic meters. In just a few breaths. A space that was originally like a small box. It was directly expanded into a warehouse. However, but that's not even the most important thing. The moment the space expansion was completed, a trace of a brand new imprint of law, quietly engraved at the core of the space. With a single thought, you move, put a glass of water from the bedside table into the space. Immediately after, you activate that new imprint. Buzz. The water surface in the cup, which had been trembling, instantly solidified. Even a droplet of water about to fall in midair. It also came to a strange halt. Time. It was as if the pause button had been pressed in that space. You instantly understood the meaning of this new ability. Absolute stagnation. Any non-living or energy entity that is absorbed into space, their state will be absolutely locked in. If a living creature is forcibly captured, then its life activities in space will also approach zero. It's like being locked in a cage that is forbidden for a certain time. What does this mean? This means you can store more warheads in the future. Flames, explosions and shockwaves. It can also strike at the moment the enemy makes a move. He directly embedded the attack and even some lines into the space. Even more frightening, you can even temporarily store a part of your body in space, then release it from another place. It created a bizarre strike, almost teleportation-like. This is no longer the highlight. It is a qualitative transformation. You clench your fists, feeling the unprecedented surging spatial power within him. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. You now. Even if he faced a true fifth-tier powerhouse head-on, it was no longer just about gambling. And just then, on the public TV outside the ward, a passionate news report was coming through. Today, the highly anticipated National Supernatural College Joint Exam, the official opening with the capital, Beijing, from the major financial clans of the Federation, hundreds of S-class and A-class geniuses from top families and the military system, to gather together in the capital. They will secure spots for the top 3 universities in the Federation. A month-long intense competition began. On the TV screen, each one is young. Pride. A dazzling face flashed by. They wore flashy combat uniforms. Behind him was a distinguished family crest. Flashes flooded overhead. It feels like we were born to stand in the clouds. You stand by the window, quietly watching the screen. But his gaze gradually grew colder. These people is the true meaning of this world. The favored child of heaven. Resources, background, quota, reputation. They are held in hand from birth. And you are from the ruins. He crawled out step by step from the alleys and the edge of life and death. But precisely because of this, you're the one who insists on going. You walk into the restroom, completely smashing in all the filth. He changed into a black combat uniform pulled from the battlefield. Then, you put that in the safe tonight. He casually pulled out a narrow battle knife and slung it behind his back. Finally, he glanced back at his sister sleeping soundly on the hospital bed. She finally survived. So, next. Now it's your turn to settle accounts with this world. You push open the hospital door. The midday sunlight is dazzlingly high. But you only squinted your eyes. Then he stepped outside. Jiang Cheng, this place is full of darkness and struggle. But it's just a beginner's village. A true hunting ground. In the capital city. Let those lofty geniuses feel the game of despair. This is just the beginning.